Hello, everybody. Dave Hodges here, host of the Common Sense Show. We have the show that's bringing America one enslaved mind at a time. And we've stressed to you the importance of sharing far and wide because we're still dealing with a lot of people who aren't bad people and they're just kind of consumed with their lives and they're busy. And some of them just need to be exposed more to really what's going on because part of what I believe we need to do is put millions of feet in the street and just say to these satanic Bolshevik communists that have taken over our government, we're not going along with you. And right now, it's early enough in the dictatorship that they need public support to carry this through. And we can deny that to them. So, this is why I want you to share. We have with us today Jamie Walden, and we're going to be talking about some things natural, some things that are supernatural, some things that are earthly, and some things that are spiritual. And I think you're going to find this to be very interesting. Before we go there, though, I want to deal in the earthly. The banks are in big trouble. Over 1,080 banks are on the watch list. Jerome Powell said banks are going to crash. And of course, the omnipresent Dodd-Frank law of 2010 says they can take your money. You're an unsecured creditor, and that also applies to your retirement. Noble Gold can help you with all that. How do I know? Well, I've been a customer of Noble Gold for 6 years, and I keep going back because I want to make sure my reallocations and my allocations and my diversity of wealth, and I'm not saying I'm wealthy, but I have some things to protect. And if you have a nest egg like me and you want to protect it, Noble Gold's where you start. Two ways to go. DaveHodgesGold.com. I can send you a free information packet digitally, and the number for Noble Gold will be on there. If you feel the urgency of the moment, like a lot of people do, call 877-646-5347, 877-646-5347. If people say, Dave, you really like the gold. I like Noble Gold. Yes. And I believe in gold and silver. I do not believe in the dollar any longer. It's just a matter of time, people. So please, please heed my warning. Jamie, it's good to have you back. If you're kind of brand new to new audience that we're getting, but you're well known to the people that have been following us for a while. Tell a little bit about your background because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again, Dave. It's
A
always
pleasure.
awesome to be on with you, talking about things that actually have value. And yeah, for the new listeners on the Common Sense Show, my name's Jamie Walden. Currently live out of Colorado. I have a background in the Marine Corps infantry, worked in law enforcement both federally and locally with the U.S. Marshals, and then with the municipal police department for becoming a paramedic, and then being a paramedic specialist and doing TIMS, tactical EMS. And after that, I became a firefighter paramedic. I kind of moved away from law enforcement where I could do disaster rescue, disaster relief, and so was on a technical rescue team in hazmat, blah blah blah, all this stuff for a while, and then traveling the world doing a lot of international disaster relief and stuff like that with that background, and ended up being called into full-time ministry by the Lord. So we liquidated our reality. We're missionaries in the Dominican Republic, and came back and wrote a book, and have done traveled the world doing some in-depth research and teaching and speaking and preaching. So kind of like now my reality is really coming at things through a biblical worldview,
Sure.
this convergent zenith of all things geopolitical, geostrategic, militaristic, technological, emerging widespread occultism, you name it. It's all connected intrinsically through a biblical worldview. And if we don't have that, then we can't understand what's going on, Dave. So
I
that's kind
totally
of
agree.
the brief synopsis.
Listen, I don't like to beat people over the head with my religion. I share it, but you can't force it and be effective. But I keep coming back to it because the events of the day really force you into the Bible because there's so many answers there right now. A lot of the things I didn't
Yeah.
understand as a child in Sunday school are becoming blatantly clear now. Like I said this comment earlier today on a Rumble broadcast I made. I said, uh, everything, four horsemen of the apocalypse, pre-tribulation, all these biblical things now are starting to really have meaning for the time we're living in. And I hate to think we're living in the end days. I'd like to think that we could repent and push it off to a later generation. But Jamie, I see the tribulation coming at us at rapid speed.
It is coming at us at rapid speed, Dave, and it's unique. I mean, not unique, it's amazing. It's Holy Spirit inspired, amazing. The detail within scriptures that even speak of the nations that now are currently in play, the governments that are currently in play, even emerging technologies that are currently in play. Genetic manipulation, scripture speaks to that is currently in play. It even speaks to things that could be coming down the pipeline in a periphery way, as far as space-based weapons platforms and disclosure and great deceptions. And how about what's going on at CERN, right? This ability to open up or tear veils and different the multiverse, for lack of a better word. All that is contained within scripture. That's why I think it's hilarious when people that haven't heard the truth of the gospel, and they kind of poo-poo the word, or they think it's vain or worthless or written by men. I'm like, bro, you don't know what's contained within that Bible. So it is all there and laid out in perfect illustration. And that's kind of where I wanted to take it today, is talking about the days of Noah and the days of Lot. And now that language is being used ad nauseum within the Christian truther community right
Sure,
now, and
it is.
it should. It's apropos. It's appropriate. So there's a couple different angles with which we can understand our reality or corporate reality now through that lens of the days of Noah and the days of Lot. One being the violence that's all throughout the holy earth. That was days of Noah, days of Lot. And by the way, one of the key components of that violence is pornography. Pornography is only ever violence. Anybody who is a purveyor or partaker or swiper on your phone of that, you are an active participant in a world and a reality of global sex trafficking and child sex trafficking that you couldn't even believe or understand. You are actively trafficking in the souls of men, and you are perpetrating the most devious acts of violence against people possible. Then you get into the abortion, then you get into just our media, our news, or whatever, the spirit of the age, right? It's all right there. So that's one nuance of the days of Noah. The other one is the returning of the golden age of the gods. There's been a lot of people out there that have spoken in depth about that and what was going on with that incursion and multiple incursions, and even the genetic manipulation of all species and all flesh. Thank Bill Gates of hell on this one, and everything else in between, our mRNA and all this other stuff. So you have that level to the days of Noah. But when Christ was speaking of the days of Noah, and both are in Matthew and Mark and Luke, when he was speaking about the days of Noah and the days of Lot, he actually gave the qualifier for exactly what he was talking about. And I'll just read it real quick. This is Luke 17.
Okay.
And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the Son of Man. This is talking about the second coming of Jesus Christ. They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise, as it was also in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even so will it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. So Christ gives us the qualifier for why he's even referencing the days of Noah and the days of Lot. What he's saying is this. Let me give you the Cliff Notes, Jamie Walden style, right?
Okay.
What he's saying is everything is going to be totally normal until it's not. There's no great buildup. There's no great crescendo. There's no multi-year, long, protracted, grinding war and trench warfare. There's no slow economic decay where we just kind of reduce in our global empire status, like a Spain or like a Portugal or like a France or like the British Empire, all the empires throughout, the Greeks, the Romans, you name them. That's not what it's saying. It's saying everything will be totally normal until it's not. Actually, in Isaiah 17, it talks about the suddenly the crack in the bulge in the wall breaks. Suddenly, in an instant, disaster befalls you. Revelation 18, this is very unique to the United States of America. Mystery Babylon, the United States of America. It says, in a single day, in a single hour, in a single hour, in a single hour. Says it 3 times. Instantly, everything's totally normal, and then it's just done. It's instantly over. And the whole world is so rocked that it literally requires a restructuring of the whole face of the earth. So this gets into what's going on currently, even with Iran and Russia and China and Ukraine and Cuba and Argentina and Argentina and Guyana and the Congo and Everything is set at this fever pitch to do what God has already said he's going to do, which everything will be normal, and then it's not. And the particular nuance to that is the United States of America contained within that. Ezekiel 38 and 39 specifically list countries by name and some of the ruling principalities over those countries that will form an alliance conspiring in secret to come against the nation of unwalled villages. Hello, North American continent, United States of America in particular. And in an instant, while they're unaware, to completely do a decapitation attack so that they can come against the nation of Israel. And so what we see going on right now with Iranian influence, the Chinese influence, the Russian influence with inside the United States of America coming across our border in our cybernetics, inside our power grid, inside our government, inside our joint chiefs, inside our county road commissioners, and the missile tests from Russia just on May 16th, right off the coast of California, literally just touching the border of our territorial waters. They put up a space-based anti-satellite weapon right overhead. North Korea has 2 satellites that traverse the continental United States multiple times a day for years, and they have never once sent data out. They are loitering munitions waiting for the single day, for the single hour. The Chinese balloon fiascos going on. That is not by any means a coincidence. They from the open source intel that I've read is that they were actively signal intelligence gathering balloons, and what they were doing was pulling the codes over our terrestrial-based missileer centers in Montana and Wyoming and North Dakota, and even down into Nebraska. Most people don't realize Nebraska is one of our chief centers for all nuclear deterrent and nuclear weapons launching. Stratcom and all that kind of stuff is outside of Omaha. But that the open source intel said that they specifically were allowed by our government to pull the codes to impede the launch directives from the nuclear football contained within inside the executive branch, to delay them by 6 minutes. It was very specific, to delay a nuclear retaliatory strike by 6 minutes.
Why?
Side note on that,
Why would they
the
do
United
that?
States, so that they can take down the central nationalistic, independent, free-thinking nation left on the face of the earth, so that they can restructure. This is all part of the Great Reset plan, right? Like, this is the restructuring. They have to, there's only one stumbling block left, and it is the psyche, it is the posture and the spirit of Americana. That's what they have to destroy. And our own leadership is completely in league with these things. I've spoken on your show. I've talked to a guy who is actively in the Pentagon, actively knows the Joint Chiefs. He said every single one of them is bought and paid for by China. He said everyone. There's not one left who hasn't been bought and paid off by China to allow this thing to occur. So when we look at it biblically, and then we look at it tangibly, objectively, empirically, not with sensationalism or hyperbolic, blah, 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 clickbaity stuff, but it just is. This is what is actively going on right now in the continental United States, or the continental United States, and then throughout the rest of the world. Like, this suddenly, this in an instant, this days of Noah, days of Lot is beating down our doors. This in a single day, in a single hour, it's coming. And here's where we can transition, Dave. What I truly believe is coming, in particular for the United States, we can make it US centric right now, is that they are going to do the ultimate blow to the ultimate highest form of our arrogancy, which is our technological reliance and our power grid. Every single piece of chatter on the geopolitical sphere is all centered on the US power grid being strategically taken down, so that we are completely out of the fight in Europe. We're completely out of the fight in the Middle East. We're completely out of the fight in Asia and in the Yellow Sea and in the East Chinese Sea and out of the Pacific theater. We're completely out of the fight economically. We're completely out of fight technologically on every single level. We can bring nothing to bear to the fight. That is why The next thing, the suddenly in an instant, the single day, the single hour, Revelation 18, that it speaks to, I believe, because of what they're saying, is going to be the strategic takedown of the entire U.S. infrastructure through our power grid.
How will they accomplish it, in your opinion?
There's multiple ways. So most people are familiar with the higher level, like an EMP type attack, right? So we talked about the loitering munitions of North Korea. Also, Iran has publicly boasted and launched ballistic missiles from the sea. An Iranian national intelligence officer who became a defector said that that test was specifically done for one singular reason: an EMP, a low altitude EMP burst over the United States of America. Anybody from Ted Koppel to the Deputy Secretary of Defense to a member of the Joint Chiefs have all warned that Russia, China, and Iran have 100% access to our power grid.
Yeah,
And
Jamie, I want to
100%.
elaborate on that for a second, because I want to put the blame squarely where I think it belongs, which is on Obama. My congressman at the time, Trent Franks, he came to my church. We had 10,000 people in the congregation show up in the community. And he showed a video about an EMP, grid down stuff, lack of protection for nuclear facilities. And he regularly wrote to NERC. He wrote to Obama. This is when he was in Congress and he was the chairman of a committee, and they ignored him. And in 2013 and 2014, in the Grid X drills, where we do a simulated grid takedown to see how we'd respond to it, Obama invited the Russians and Chinese to participate. I don't know how much more
Yep.
treasonous you can get than that. I covered that extensively when it happened.
Yeah, they did. And actually, I learned a lot about that from you at the time, Dave. And that's something for the listeners to go dig up in the archives or research on yourself, is the Grid X1 and the Grid X2 drills. So that's why we're saying, like, this country is sold out from within, because it can't, just because of the nature of even our geography, our landmass, and blah, blah, blah. This nation could never be taken down from the outside. Every strategic planner on the face of the earth has come to that realization. The only way it can be taken down is from the inside out. And it's interesting when you listen to the language of the Bible and the language of what we would consider the enemies of the United States of America. They're saying this: we are only referred to as the arrogant one. That's they won't use the United States of America. The Iranian, which is Shia Muslim, and they have their apocalyptic version. And even like when you read things from Lavrov and Medvedev and all these different guys and people out of China from their what would be their equivalent of Joint Chiefs, they only refer to the United States of America as the arrogant one. What's interesting is Mystery Babylon, spoken of in Jeremiah 50 and 51, and then again in Revelation 18, is referred to as the arrogant one. Oh, arrogant one. Oh, arrogant one. And because of the arrogancy, and the reason why the nation states say we're arrogant is because of our hubristic nature and believing we're untouchable, because of our reliance on technological superiority. That's why every single one of them, Russia, China, and Iran, their first strike doctrine, everybody listen to me, their first strike doctrine against the United States of America is a takedown of our power grid, all three of them. That is their primary first strike doctrine against the United States of America, because they say that is our arrogancy. And all you have to do is flip the switch, and we are the most worthless nation in the world, and we will actually destroy ourselves, and they won't have to even fire a shot when it's all said and done. So here's what's crazy, Dave. I'm just thinking about this. I have it open in front of me, is Revelation 18. Notice what I won't read it all, but I'll read this one section. Tell me if this sounds to you like the power grid being taken down against Mystery Babylon. After it says, in a single day, in a single hour, in a single hour, in a single hour, her wealth is brought to ruin. Her great wealth is gone. All she has is brought to ruin. She will be utterly consumed by fire. All the merchants of the earth will mourn and weep for her, because no one is going to buy their goods anymore. All the merchants of the earth got wealthy off of Mystery Babylon, daughter Babylon, and her arrogancy and her licentiousness. And then it says this in the single hour: with such violence, the great city of Babylon will be thrown down, never be found again. Found again. The music of the harpists and the musicians, the flute players and the trumpeters will never be heard again. Where is the center of all the music industry of the world? United States of America. Okay, we'll check that box. No workman of any trade will ever be found in her again. The sound of the millstone will never be heard in her again. The light of a lamp will never shine in you again. The voice of the bridegroom and the bride will never be heard in you again. Your merchants were the world's great men resided because of your pharmakia, your sorceries with which you led the whole world astray. So it says, and it goes on and elsewhere. I'm kind of skipping around, but it says they're the center of all trade and commerce. It's the center of all precious metals exchange. It's the center of music and music industry. It's the center of entertainment and the entertainment industry. It is the hammer in all the earth. It is a global police force that opposes and asserts its authority over all the face of the earth. And it is highly technologically advanced. And in a single hour, it's done. Days of Noah, days of Lot. It's just done. It gets turned off. And I know that you're familiar with Henry Gruber's prophecy, and maybe some of your listeners are, but Henry Gruber is one of many that have had this same vision, this same prophetic vision from the Lord. And what he specifically saw was like kind of the old school cartoons, you know, where you see like a tower, an old cell tower or radio tower, kind of sending out their little beacons, you know, doing their beep, 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 beep thing, sending out the beacons across the US. And in his vision, he saw all those across the whole US, and all of a sudden they turned off. They went dead. And the Russians and the Chinese started attacking strategic targets in the United States, nuclear weapons in a full-on invasion, and nobody even knew it was happening because all communications and power were shut off. And they had free reign to do. Nobody mounted a defense. Nobody came out to the fight. No missiles left their tubes. No interceptor missiles left their tubes. By the way, let me point this out to the listeners. The United States of America only has 44 counter nuclear weapon interceptor missiles. 44. Okay. And they have a 30% accuracy rate. Let that sink in. We have 44 and they only have a 30% accuracy rate. Iran alone, not to mention China, Iran, Russia, India, Pakistan, all the other nuclear powers, we're at like, I know at the peak it was like 28,000 nuclear weapons in Russia alone. One North Korean nuclear weapon would clean out all of our counter nuclear weapon interceptor missiles. One, I can't remember the name of their particular missile. Because contained with them are all kinds of dummy nuclear missiles to eat up any counter missileer systems that you have. So anyways, I digress. But what I'm saying is most people don't understand is the vulnerability of the United States because of our arrogancy and our hubris and our wickedness and our complete and utter corruption. This single day, single hour, days of Noah, days of Lot is breathing down our neck in a way that most people can't even fathom, Dave.
I can't either. It's just, like I said, the words are coming at us so rapidly now that Revelation's starting to make sense.
On that, I'm just thinking of this, Dave. Sorry not to interrupt you, but my pea brain stirred. There's actually another verse that alludes, I don't know, this is Jamie's speculation, right? So do with it what you will, listeners. But it says, in that day, they will sound the trumpet for war, but nobody will respond to it. Again, it's almost like it's in that day, the day of the Lord. It's like there's an EMP, there's no comms. It says they're going to try to sound the alarm to rally to war, and nobody will come out. There's actually another prophetic word against a reprobate nation like the United States. It says, in that day, all your fighting men will be like women. Hello, woke U.S. military. Literally, they're trying to make our service members be like women. I'm sure you've seen the images of the army making men walk around in high heels and their camis walk around in high heels so they can, relate to women and whatever and all this trannyism and blah, blah. Like, I'm telling you, the prophetic scriptures are so detailed that there is nothing left to guess about how close all this is at the door. So now you get into Russia doing nuclear war drills starting yesterday. They literally deployed strategic tactical nuclear weapons. You have 5 I'm talking high profile Iranian assassinations with
Yes.
virtually in the last 96 hours. Their
Before you go
president,
on, who's doing that, Jamie? I want to get your opinion.
there's speculation that it's Mossad. There's a lot of speculation that it's Mossad. There could be a couple of different players. There's also a secondary speculation, which is just as viable as the fact that it's Mossad, that it is a form of what we would call a false flag, or like an internal coup against these primary top tier leaders. You want to know why? Because they have been restraining Iran from using nuclear weapons against Israel. And they want a more hardline leadership, top level cabinet type strategic leadership in Iran to take it to the next level against Israel. So those are the two purveying perspectives. And we won't know. We won't
Yeah,
know till after the fact what the truth is,
there are people that suggested to me, and this just gives me a headache, I'll be honest with you. But people suggested to me it's the CIA and the Mossad trying to start World War III.
And I believe that is in the top two most viable speculations. The reason why is that the US and the West in general is in its death gurgles. Russia is not put on their heels. Iran is definitely not put on their heels. China hasn't even been rocked back at all on their heels, and none of the other nations are. The US is in the death gurgle spiral in its agonal respirations, and that is a dangerous, dangerous beast, which is why, again, coming full circle, first strike military doctrine and plans by Russia, China, and Iran is to turn out the lights in the United States of America because they're dangerous. They know we are unbelievably dangerous and unpredictable. You've heard the comments from Putin or Medvedev and all these other guys about the U.S. being a blood cult, about the U.S. sacrificing its own children, like the rest of the world is openly talking about what the United States of America is actually built upon. Hello, go to Washington, D.C. All you have to do is look at the monuments. It's literally the Temple of Pergamon, the seat of Satan is what one of the edifices is made after, right? Like this, it's the District of Columbia. Who's Columbia? Go do your research, right? Like they do the Apollo rising ceremony or Osiris rising ceremony at the inauguration of every U.S. president. Pay attention to what this nation is actually centered on and built around. Although there has been the availability for the freedom to worship the God of your choosing, including Jesus Christ, that was set in stone so that they could have the option to raise up their level of occultism that they want to do too. Anyways, I digress again. It's all coming to a head right now. Currently, as of yesterday, the U.S. has 2 nuclear command and control aircraft circling over the U.S. 24/7 with refuel tankers in tow to keep them afloat, or aloft would be the right word for aviation. Along with that, there are 2 strategic nuclear bombers that are circling 24/7 over the U.S. As of yesterday, Great Britain, France, Estonia, Latvia, Sweden, Finland, Romania, Moldova, the Russian counterpart of our nuclear command, the Chinese counterpart of our nuclear command, they all put up their doomsday planes as well too.
Did they
yesterday,
really? I
and the
know,
day
I know
before.
Russia's testing nukes on the Ukrainian border.
Yeah, all of them
I did
did.
not know that they put their, oh, wow.
And here's what's interesting is the U.S. intercepted what do they call it? Like nuclear broadcasting, like a nuclear broadcast over. I think it's, don't quote me on this, but it's very high frequency channel where it's kind of coded little beeps and dots and dashes and blah 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 from the island of Cuba, and they haven't been able to decode what it was telling. It was either initiating the next level? Are these fifth column forces or internal things? And it came from Cuba, and I believe there was another one somewhere else. Don't quote me on this. I got so many stuff right around in my head. Cuba for certain, where just yesterday they broadcast those signals, and the speculation is that they were initiating a significant phase in preparation for turning out the lights in the United States of America, or doing a first strike option. So now why this is dangerous is because the US, again, is so vile and unpredictable. Even even our allies are turning against us. That's prophetic fulfillment, by the way. Go do your research. It
Yeah,
literally
well,
says those
you
who were
can
once
thank.
your allies will turn on you, because they know that the US is going to get Europe destroyed. They already have Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2 pipeline. They're the meat grinder of the men and material, the imploding of their economies. The US has done our, diary of an economic hitman propaganda against our allies. And all of them know that the US is so dangerous that there is a high potential that all of them are in agreement, conspiring in secret, as the scripture says, for in a single day and a single hour to take us down. Even our allies, our European allies, because it's so dangerous. It's so economically, everything's in free fall collapse. The American populace are the only ones that don't know it. Every European country is actively preparing for nuclear war. They're digging trenches. They're digging tank traps. They're telling their citizens to put bunkers in their basements. They're handing out potassium iodine pills all throughout Sweden. Every citizen is getting potassium iodine in preparation for nuclear war. Manuals are being held out, even in what we would consider, maybe nominal countries like in the Balkans, the Baltic states for sure, but in the Balkans as well, like a Moldavo, right? And like a Romania, the Transnistria region, places you don't even think about are all actively preparing for nuclear war, including China, including Russia, including Iran, including Israel, everybody except for the United States of America.
It's overwhelming. That's my initial reaction to this. It's overwhelming.
Yeah. You know what, Dave? They found, the Slovakian president just had the assassination attempt. Sounds like he's probably going to die. So we have a European president who got assassinated. Now we have an Iranian. I mean, does anybody not understand that we are actively in World War III? Actively in World War III. All the nations of Europe, along with the US, NATO, are converging against with the nations of the East, right on a conventional maneuver warfare battlefield in real time. Strategic nuclear weapons are being put everywhere. The submarine force, the subsurface warfare component of North Korea disappeared. Nobody knows where they are. And it's my presupposition that North Korea will be the agreed upon scapegoat for what happens in the US. It will be a North Korea based missile, a North Korean based launch, a North Korean based EMP or whatever it is, or even a cyber component that can't be attributed to Russia or China or Iran. It will be specifically North Korea being given a seat at the new table, and they will be the scapegoat for what comes next. All their submarines are gone. Nobody knows where they are.
Really?
And
That means they're
North
deployed.
Korea, yeah. And if people aren't familiar, it was, I don't know, don't quote me on this, 7, 8 years ago now, when North Korean submarine surfaced in the Gulf of Mexico, basically giving the big finger to the US intelligence apparatus inside our territorial waters, and then disappeared again just to say, screw you, look what I can do. Like, they are that Russian cable cutting submarines have been found off the continental shelf on the Atlantic, sitting there waiting for the US intelligence apparatus to find them to go, screw you, we're here anytime we want. We can do whatever we want. You have Russian submarines off the Alaska doesn't even matter anymore. I mean, it's strategic. Don't misplace my words. Actually, 40 of those 44 interceptor missiles, we only have 44 nuclear intercepting missiles that have a 30% accuracy rate. 40 of them are in Alaska. 40 of the 44 are in Alaska, which has direct access from Russia, right? So like, this stuff is so converging right now. But notice, Dave, apart from your listeners, everybody is eating and drinking and buying and selling and doing business as usual. In the days of Noah, as it was in the days of Noah, as it was in the days of Lot, in the suddenly mystery Babylon, right? Living in luxury, feeding herself, saying, I'll never be afraid. I'll never see harm. I'll never be a widow. No one will ever make me mourn. That's what it says. The arrogancy of mystery Babylon is saying. And then it says, in a single hour, I saw smoke rising from all of her cities in a single hour.
I've read the projections. If Putin launched full-scale attack on America, we would lose about 260 million people.
That's interesting because it was man, where is he at? Not Richard Clark. I'm trying to scan my notes here. The former counterterrorism czar said that the Russian, the Chinese, and the Iranians have full access to our grid. Who was it? He said it was one of the senators, and the deputy secretary of defense said 90% casualties with inside of 1 year when they turn off the lights. And he said, when they turn off the lights.
When you say that, let me tell you, it gives me hesitation to buy into the EMP goal. China wants to inhabit America for its resources. They've made that very clear. Wei Fang, and then going back 3 defense ministers before him to 2004, they want to take over America, and they're really clear. They don't want to cohabitate, so they mean genocide. Now, if they take over America and America is destroyed from an EMP basis and not a simple grid down like a cyber takedown, then it would take them years, if not more than a decade, to rebuild. And I've heard the Chinese are opposed to EMP use against the U.S.
I'm glad you brought that up, Dave. I'm in total agreement. I do not. I mean, this is what high level, like even the former head of the CIA, the former head of the NSA, they're all warning about an EMP. Warning, warning, warning. So I'm just speaking from their language. I'm of the same presupposition, though. An EMP is not a viable option if you're wanting to occupy and utilize a landmass. You would not EMP it. It'd be an impossibility to bring it back online. The thing that's vulnerable in the US is our transformers, our high voltage transformers. There's 55,000 high voltage transformers in the US. There is not one regulatory committee over them. There is not one defense strategy over them. There is not one person in charge of them. They are totally private. And of those 55,000 high voltage transformers, if only 9 of them get taken out, like even shot with a 7.62 round, right? Like it's some kind of heavier weighted round that can wreck these high load transformers, they're 100 plus tons. You cannot just replace these transformers. If they move one in, they have to reroute highways and take down traffic lights and move power lines to put one in. They said if one transformer goes down, it takes 18 months to replace it if we even have it. If only 9, they said if only 9 of those get taken out, the whole grid goes down. So I'm of the same presupposition as you, Dave. I do not see an EMP as a viable option at all whatsoever. However, cybernetics and a cyber warfare controlled takedown of the power grid so that they can bring it back online selectively at their choosing. Now that makes sense for wanting to occupy. So you think, there's only three power generating regions in the United States of America, right? It's East, West, and Texas has its own. And then what happens is when these transformers get taken out or taken offline through cybernetics, it creates a cascade collapse. And so again, by their projections, this is our government's there's people lobbying for the right things. They know how vulnerable we are. But their projections, when they do all their wargaming stuff and all their algorithms, blah, 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 is 90% casualties within the United States of America within 1 year. By the way, regarding those transformers, over 300 of them are from China directly.
Yep. I was just going to bring that up.
There's backdoor access to them from the Chinese manufacturers to the CCP intelligence community. And by the way, there is no regulation from the federal government that the private sector power companies even check for malware. They don't even have to check for malware on these in these transformers. That's how vulnerable we actually are.
Well, you're right. You said a mouthful there. The transformers are manufactured in China now. We don't have any ones that would be replacement objects in this country.
They don't exist.
They
Yeah.
don't exist. Exactly right. I think we're going to see a cyber grid takedown and a company infrastructure takedown without the use of EMP. Now,
I
listen,
agree.
I could be wrong, but if you really want China to prevail as a world policeman, and this is what the globalists want, they have to be able to meet their people's needs so they don't have an internal revolution. And they're in some trouble right now. So what they need to do is take North America's resources and Wei Fang's famous speech, John Moore and I and Paul, the late Paul Martin, we popularized this, Jamie. We wrote about this and did shows on this. Wei Fang was quite clear. He said the way to take down America is with race-specific bioweapons that he claims they developed in conjunction with Israel, meaning to me the Mossad. And the Mossad's fully in support of globalist agendas, just like the CIA. So I don't see the EMP, but I do see an infrastructure takedown that can be easily repaired. And then, Jamie, this is some, I want to take this just for a second in a slightly different direction. I've been covering for over 10 years now, 13 to be exact, a UN presence in this country at key times, like when we do CONUS drills under Obama. We've done that. We manufacture UN MRAPs in Hagerstown, Maryland. I've got the pictures I published on that. We now have revelations from multiple sources this week that say that Biden is laundering money to NGOs to bring in terrorists, but some of these terrorists are UN disguised people. Now, I have a source, Jamie. This is not isolated either, but it's something I could put my hands on. A taxi driver in New York who I know had a client and he was taking him to and fro and he had like a 3-day job with him and he got to know him and he talked about his brother in Venezuela who is paid by an NGO to come to America to be part of a UN peacekeeping force when it's time to roll out martial law.
Yeah.
This,
Yeah.
this
I've
Jamie,
caught one of the same thing.
I'm convinced all of this is happening right now.
It is all happening at the same time, and that gets into, even like Michael Yon and
Very much so.
Vandersteel and all their reporting from the Darien Gap in Panama and at the border. And there's a lot of other awesome investigative journalists out there that are tracking all this stuff, even in Venezuela and all the way up to the border. Is this thing's a done deal, and that's why the suddenly in an instant people can't understand it unless they have that context. They can't understand how in a single hour. Which, side note, I've had 3 dreams from the Lord over the last 13 years about full-on Chinese invasions, 3 different times, straight from the Lord, not eating bad pizza. And in every time, the troops were everywhere instantly, and nobody was even fearful because they had no context for what they were doing here. There was no fear.
I've
They
told
had no
this,
fear.
yeah.
They were everywhere all at the same time. So when you read these reports about 10,000 Chinese military-age fighting men per day being allowed by the DOJ, given stand down orders to Border Patrol and ICE and everywhere to come across the border. When you hear the reports of Russian strategic nuclear bombers in Venezuela, Chinese mobilization full armor brigades up in Canada and also below our southern border, when you hear these things, when you hear about the shipping containers full of crew served weapons being pre-positioned all across the U.S., when you have to take all that in context to understand how the days of Noah, days of Lot, the suddenly in a single hour can actually occur. And that's why Dave and I are trying to share with the listeners this paramount information, because it is right there at the door any day. Everything's normal. And then it's not. Currently, as it stands, everything's normal. I can take my family out to eat without fear right now. There's plenty of food on the shelves. I can put fuel into my truck. whatever it takes. You can vacation. I just got back from Zion National Park last week, went out there canyoneering with my family, took them out there rock climbing and rappelling and canyoneering. It's like, there's still good things that we can do. And that's why that single hour suddenly in an instant is so relevant. Days of Noah, days a lot.
I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but I have written a couple of times in the last 12 years that we're headed for a Tet offensive attack. And what I meant by that, in Vietnam in 1968, it was, we had a 3-day ceasefire signed with the Viet Cong and North Vietnamese, and they used that downtime to attack every capital of every province in South Vietnam to demonstrate to the American people. It was a propaganda move that Johnson was lying to the American people, that we were nowhere close to winning the war, and it was a Tet offensive that happened all at once, well orchestrated, and no one seemingly knew. I've said we're headed for a Tet offensive too, with all the immigrants we're letting in, because they're not all of our friends, and they're not all coming here to have a better life. They're pre-positioning to attack in a single moment to give us a Tet offensive moment.
Yes,
And
I agree.
and
And not just that, Dave, but also let's not forget about the MEPS station, which people that haven't been in the military aren't familiar with MEPS. It's kind of your intake processing for the United States military, that there is active reporting on the border of US Armed Forces MEPS stations, mobile stations being set up on the border, that as these immigrants come across, they bring them in, offer them citizenship, whatever, and put them right into the US military. I've been, I always am watching videos on the military, being a Marine and stuff like that. And the military, now this isn't a knock on immigrants. This is a knock on strategic military infiltration for a takedown of America. When I watch videos out of the US Army, the US Air Force in particular right now, there is virtually few Anglos in there. They're all Latino or Asian. Which again, that's not a knock on Latino, they're Asian. What it's saying is there is an agenda going on here. They are not US citizens. They don't share the same values, they don't have the same ethos, they don't have the same desire for culture. They're not here for assimilation, for a new way of life and better opportunities. Historically, as America, which is only a nation of immigrants, every single one of us is an immigrant, but we came here to assimilate to this American idealistic type of reality of these good attributes of freedom through the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all these things. That's not what's happening. They're strategically being put into the military, put into the National Guard, put into all these things, coming across the border, staging as fifth column forces in all the major cities of America. So at the appointed time, even if the military does seek to repel this Tet offensive, for lack of a better word, they're going to be given stand down orders and the troops aren't going to fire because they're in league with it. I mean, I think it's you, Dave, who broke the hot mic story from the Chinese equivalent of the DoD, where they were caught on a hot mic discussing openly how Governor Newsom from California has assured them stand down orders all the way to the Rocky Mountains, that he has assured them that they would issue stand down orders to the West Coast based National Guard units, that's Oregon, Washington, California, and that they'll be able to just walk in and gain their beachhead on the West Coast so they can start moving across the
they're
continental
already
United
there.
States.
There's a couple developments here, and you're right about the 10,000 per day. I published photos with Chinese males, no females, fighting age, and their mannerisms are military, parade at rest, and so forth. And then Dick Durbin came out during this time, the senator from Illinois. He said, we need to put illegal aliens into the military and then give them instant citizenship. And combined with that, my friend Paul Preston, who's the head of the New California movement, he says his sources are seeing these Chinese go into Camp Pendleton in white unmarked vans. So presumably they're being trained there. That's the assumption. No
I
one
got
really
it, Dave.
knows.
I got an email from an active duty Marine. Obviously, just being a sergeant in the Marine Corps infantry, guys are good at connecting with one another in that way. Active duty Marine on Pendleton. This was about 6 weeks ago. He was furious because he said, and he was an NCO, like a corporal, and he said he's being forced to train Chinese
That's what I've
on
heard.
Camp Pendleton.
This is
Yep.
exactly what I've heard. The same thing, that there are disgruntled tactical sergeants there that are really, really unhappy with what they're being made to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Dave, that gets into like the big again, we got to paint the bigger picture so you can understand the nuance. Why the defund the police? Why impede the critical infrastructure? Why leave all of our weapons and munitions in Afghanistan and then send all of our remaining strategic supplies, especially anti-armor crew serve weapons like Javelin missile systems and else, all over to Ukraine to be burned up? Why ship our strategic oil reserves over there to be burned up? Everything is being strategically depleted and reduced and crippled as much as possible, from the military to the police to the National Guard to our reserves to our, beans, bullets, and band-aids, everything in between, so that when our officials, our unelected leadership, chooses to allow this thing to happen, there's very little pushback. This gets into all the anti-gun laws and Obama shutting down the last lead smelting plant so that our firearms just become paperweights at the end of the day once the animal dries up. And I mean, all of it is strategic for the takedown and takeover of the United States of America in a single day, in a single hour.
Do you believe um, well, let me put it this way. Wei Fang called for genocide. He said, we're not going to cohabitate North America to get their resources. Do you believe this will be genocide? They'll go community to community, or they'll use
Yes.
strategic bioweapons. How would that look, Jamie, in your opinion?
Yeah, I can't speak to the bioweapons. I know that that's a viable option, and I know the science behind it and the different military units from different nations. I mean, I've dug into that, just open source research about what they're doing with that. Genetic specific bioweapons. Whether or not they'll use that, I don't know. To me, that seems like a Pandora's box that it may have unintended consequences. But when I look at it biblically, it is going to be the wrath of God to allow them to probably release these things. As it says, a third of the world's population is killed by pestilence, which would be, bioweapon disease. So could be, right? But as far as the cohabitation, no, I know that is a very specific thing. Most people don't know the xenophilic perspective of Chinese. The Chinese have no regard for Western thinking. That's why we try to project on them how we would operate. You can't even do. They don't even operate off the same paradigm, off the same ethos, off the same whatever. They have a xenophilic perspective that goes, from what I've read, it's about 3 times beyond Nazi Germany and the Third Reich's agenda as
That's what I've
far
heard.
as
Yeah.
racial superiority.
Oh my, you're right
Yeah,
on the money. Wei
from what
Fang,
I've heard, they're about 3 times beyond
yeah,
what the perspective and perception of the Third Reich was with the Aryan race. The Chinese are 3 times beyond that with their xenophilic agenda of being descendants of a particular bloodline of the white dragon, and that they have basically a manifest destiny to rule and reign the world through the power of the dragon. This is their words: empowered by the great red dragon, the serpent dragon, to rule and reign over the face of the earth. And they are not interested in cohabitation.
you just repeated almost word for word the Wei Fang speech that John Moore, Paul Martin, and I leaked when we got a hold of it.
Oh, really?
They went through their history and they said the problem with Nazi Germany is they were too soft, they didn't go far enough, and they were
There you
talking
go.
about, yeah, exactly. And they talked about it's our people that populated North America. Indians are the descendants of the Chinese, and he got into all that stuff. You're exactly right. Everything you just said was contained in Wei Fang's proclamation to the Central Planning Committee of the CCP that we're going to commit genocide, excuse me, in America and to get their resources, and we're leaving no Americans alive. The only debate, Jamie, was what to do with the 14 million Chinese that live in America, people of Chinese descent. He said there's a division that some people think they're too Americanized, so we have to kill them. Some people think they can be rehabilitated. That was Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's,
that's interesting because that's similar to what occurred even with the Japanese internment camps at the onset of World War II, you know, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor and how that policy was implemented. It was the same thing. They weren't sure, do you assimilate them? Can they be re-educated, or do they all need to be contained and dealt with accordingly? So, yeah, I mean, I can we have historical precedents for them walking that out. So that's why so when we look at this, even from the lens of like the Deagle report or
yeah,
from the Deputy Secretary of Defense and his statements, or the head of the NSA or the head of the CIA or multiple senators, I have all these guys as quotes listed in front of me. I won't go through them. They're
well,
all
Jamie, we
saying
got
the exact same thing.
we got about a minute left, and I'm going to have you back because we need to expand on this. But
Yeah.
what I'd like to do is I want to leave the audience in less than a minute. Tell them what we should be doing as American people.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, repent, for the day of the Lord is at hand.
Bingo, bingo.
That's all this, what this, all this alludes to is that the Lord is who he says he is. The word is what it says it is. What's coming next is what it says it is. And you can have a hope in Jesus Christ, just like he said. It's all,
That's
that's why the Spirit of Christ is the spirit of prophecy. So
that's where we're going to
do
have to leave
business
it,
with
though.
the holy God who loves you.
Yeah, and I hate to cut it short but this is begging for a part two, because there's other things that are action steps that need to be taken with the repent and the salvation. And there are
Yeah.
definite action steps that we could be doing right now. And I want to have you back to talk about that. So I'll be in touch with you. How do people follow you very quickly, Jamie?
Yeah, they can get a hold of me at omegadynamics.org, or just subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's just under Jamie Walden, and that's where the weekly sermons and stuff like that are posted, or different interviews that
Okay,
are out there. So
that's
they can
awesome.
find
And
me there.
I'm glad someone has a YouTube channel left. Well, Jamie, I want to, whoops, I just lost my picture. I want to thank you for coming on, Jamie. We're flat out of time, but I'll be in touch with you because there is a part two to this. Jamie Walden, ladies and
All
gentlemen, I would
right.
encourage you to follow him, and thank you so
Thank
much for coming on, Jamie. Take care.